So there's a clip being shown right now of Matt Serra being confronted by Joshua Fabia, who's Diego Sanchez's coach, and they had I'll call it a little bit of a confrontation where Josh was kind of demanding some respect off of Matt Serra. Apparently he didn't know Matt Serra wasn't acknowledging Josh in certain things, and Matt's like, I don't really know who you are. You can watch it yourself. It's a little bit of a ridiculous clip. But it did remind me of an old school story, or it did remind me of a story I can share when I met Diego Sanchez. I've known him for a long time. You got to remember that when I met him, or back in the day, Diego Sanchez got his start, as far as I know. He was the face of the Jackson Guido team, the world famous New Mexico team. Back in the day, the faces of that team were Diego Sanchez and Keith Jardine. And not only did they compete in MMA, they would show up at a lot of grappling tournaments. So I would see them on that. And any no-gi grappling tournament in the greater Southwest area, California and all that, they would come en masse and quite frankly, they would do really well. It boded well for the reputation of what they're doing. And there was a tournament that I had gone to in Las Vegas. It was called I can't remember what the name of the tournament was. All these things tend to blur together, but it was a first-time tournament thrown by a guy, Show No Pity Mike. He had a website called Show No Pity, and he decided he was going to throw a grappling tournament. It was his very first grappling tournament. I don't know how involved he was in grappling, but when we got there, he had a really good lineup. He had a super fight. It was going to be Dave Terrell versus Ken Cronenberg, which fell through. I can't remember exactly what happened. I think Ken Cronenberg got really sick at the event or something like that for whatever reason. And then he had a good 8-man tournament, Nick Diaz was involved in that one. I can't remember what the lineup was on that. So it had a lot of hype. He got us in there, but he only hired one referee. He hired Kurt Osiander as his referee. And if anybody's been to an event, you got to have multiple events or multiple mats running on there. You need multiple refs. And he didn't have that, or scorekeepers, or anything else right there. So he had actually invited, and somehow got both of them to come, which is unusual, the president of NAGA, Kip Collar, and the president of Grappler's Quest, Brian Simmons. And if you know, back in those days, 15 years ago, they didn't necessarily get along. You didn't see those two guys at the same venue. But I guess Show No Pity Mike promised such an event. He had such a good, super fights and all that lined up that he convinced a lot of people to come, including myself. I wasn't going to go to this one. I was going to shine on this one. It was a period, I will never forget, I had been to 10 events in 10 weekends. And every single one of those events involved travel, and I was just tired. I can't possibly go to every single event. Even though it was my job. I went there, he said, we'll have a good time. Help me out. It's going to be my first tournament to this lineup. You, for sure, you Show No Pity Mike, I'll do it. Okay? But I get there, and I'm ready to do my OTM thing, which is filming and being the journalist. And I thought I would be have a fun tournament in Vegas and do some video work and write up a story and go party. But, he had one ref, Kurt, and no scorekeepers, didn't know how to do the brackets or anything like that. So, I filmed maybe one match, and Brian comes up to me, he's like, Mike's in the weeds right now. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's like, let's help him out. Brian's a good guy like that. So we wound up reffing the matches. I wound up making brackets. I helped tear down the event after all was said and done. I worked like it was my own tournament. And I'll do this not only just for Show No Pity Mike, mind you, but I'll do that for for the competitors. These guys came out. It was a good turnout. All these people came out to have a good event and all that. I can do something about it. I want to see people have a good time at the event. To me, I wouldn't let that happen. It was in our power. So Brian, myself, and Kurt reffed all the matches and did a lot more work than you expect on that. And Mike, was definitely grateful. He was like, I'll take you out. He had a limo and stuff like that. I was too exhausted to do anything. After this event wound up, at whatever time it did, I didn't want to go out to Vegas. I didn't want to go out to eat. I didn't want to go out drinking or partying or anything like that. I wanted to go back to my hotel room and pass out. And that's exactly what I did. Fast forward about a week later, there's more media sources now, but one of the main media sources aside from OTM is the Abu Dhabi Combat page, which is still going on and still has writers and stuff like that. And they're doing an article about the Sin City tournament. And they're interviewing Diego Sanchez. Or maybe they were interviewing Diego Sanchez, who at this point, like this is some years ago, like was just kind of like the face of Jackson Gaida, or like the main guy there. And I think he was like King of the Cage champion. This is well before the Ultimate Fighter showed up. And he's just talking about, like, they're doing an interview with him, and he's like, yeah, and it's like, I don't feel that Jackson gets any respect, which in retrospect, or knowing what we know now, seems really silly. And that's like, we show up to all these tournaments, we do really well, and we don't get any media press on this because we're not jiu-jitsu guys. Like, take the Sin City tournaments. Like, OTM was all over this tournament, and they didn't mention anything about it. They didn't talk about the tournament. Like, we're not getting any credit on that. I'm like, whoa. Like, I go to a lot of tournaments. I acknowledge the fact you guys do well. Like, I report on you. Like, I haven't had nothing but complimentary things to say about that. Like, I was, quite frankly, a little bit upset about this. It's like I do give you guys credit. Like, I do have a lot of respect for what you do. And I mentioned it maybe on one of the forums or maybe on my own site. It's like, hey, like, somebody say, talk to Diego. It's like, I like him. To the point where as like some representatives of Jackson's like, like, we like you too. It's like, Greg Jackson's always thought that you gave him good press and talked him up and, at least gave him credit for what he was doing and all that. Like, we don't know where that came from either. So the next tournament that I'm at, maybe a week or two later, who knows? I went to a lot of tournaments back in the day. I'm sitting there at some place, and Diego strides up to me, shakes his hands like, hi, my name's Diego Sanchez. It's a pleasure to meet you. And we had a little bit of a conversation, and we laughed about that. The thing, he might have apologized at that point and said, like, no, like, I really like you and all that. And it was the start of a friendship, I love Diego to death. Like, success hasn't spoiled the guy. Like, I remember him when he was that hungry guy fighting in King of the Cage. It's the guy that won the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Like, I can tell you a couple of things about Diego. There was another tournament. It was an East Coast Grappler's Quest this time, which had an 8-man tournament. And he comes up to me, and I'm at the booth or I'm wherever right there. And I'll remember two things. He had a scar on his eye, or because he had freshly fought in King of the Cage at that point. And he's just like, so he looked a little bit crazy, and he's like, well, time to beat some black belts. And, Diego, I think, has a ranking in Jackson Gaida, which we're not sure of the lineages, or if they do a belt ranking system anymore, like, for what they do. But he also said that at a time that, like, black belts were magical. Like, there's far less of them at this point than there are right now. But here's a guy that came in, he had that confidence, like, yep, I'm going to get some black belts today. And I'm not representing jiu-jitsu, I'm representing grappling and all that. Damn it, he won the tournament. He beat guys like, he beat Sean Williams in that tournament. He beat Pablo Popovich in the finals, to tell you the caliber of grappler that Diego Sanchez is. And not just like, Diego's aggressive. He's going to go after the submission the other time. Like, it was a great match. I'm going to have to dig that up. Are the archives, or maybe Brian posted it up on his site too. But I just never forget that level of confidence on there. And he's a grappler. Like, he loved grappling. Like, he went on, he obviously won the Ultimate Fighting Championship. That was a history-changing moment. They were going to give him the six-figure contract, if you remember from that. And immediately after winning that Ultimate Fighting contract, he competed in the Abu Dhabi 2005. Yeah, that's the timing on that, because Ultimate Fighter happened in 2004. Then the Abu Dhabi 2005 was in Long Beach. And he was like, yeah, there's no way I'm missing this. Like, this invitation is a dream come true. I'm going to do this. Even though the UFC definitely would have preferred that he didn't fight in that event, or he didn't compete in that event. But there was nothing they could do about it at that point. And he's obviously a way bigger name, made way more, and he had way more to lose at this point. But he just loved grappling. He just loved that opportunity. Like, even when he had that match against Marcelo Garcia, and as good as Diego Sanchez is as a grappler, Marcelo Garcia was clearly the better one on that, but he just had the biggest smile on his face. Like I said, I can't say enough things about, like, what I think about Diego and, like, the type of human he is, and how I like seeing him. And Matt Serra, since the story always comes back to him, I'll tell you right now, Matt Serra is literally the funniest human being I've hung out with in my life. I've hung out with plenty of celebrities, comedians, like I've hung out with Joe Rogan. Great dude. In person, hanging out conversationally, Matt Serra is the funniest human being I've ever met in my life. People talk stories about his maestro, Renzo Gracie, how great of a storyteller is. I'm telling you, Matt Serra is the funniest person I've met in my entire life. He's told me stories that there's no way they're ever going to get repeated on the internet. And just like, he's made me laugh so hard, I'm crying. And I say this because, Matt Serra is probably the last person on the planet that you would want to confront on either a physical or a verbal standpoint. Physical is the obvious one right there. He's the first Renzo Gracie black belt. He's a former UFC welterweight champion. People forget how good this guy is on the ground. But, you're seeing him, there's a reason why Dana White wants to hang out with Matt. Because Matt's a funny dude. He's just got the best one-liners. He's got the best reactions. He's a great dude to hang out with. He's one of my favorite. Like I said, he's the funniest person I've ever met in my life. So to see Diego's coach, and Matt's like, I respect the hell out of Diego. I just don't know who the heck you are. So it just reminded me of the old story with Diego. So there's a Gumby old school story for you.